If you've been around for a little while, you probably noticed that, like this video, I like to start a lot of my videos off with original tracks or compositions that showcase either a specific piece of gear or a technique or an idea that I want to talk about in that video. One of the main reasons I do this is because every time I make one of those videos, I get better. I get better as a writer, I get better as a mixer, as an engineer, as a guitar player. It's a really good way to hone your skills as a musician. And one of my favorite tools for writing is my cell phone. If you're anything like me, your phone is probably chock full of little 10 or 15-second clips for riff ideas or melodies. So today we're going to talk about some different ways to take your simple iPhone recordings and turn them into fully produced tracks. Okay, before we jump into the track, let's talk a little bit about the gear I use to get all of the sounds. I did everything through my divided by 13 FTR 37, and I used this guitar. This is from Echo Park, and I asked them to send this to me when I saw them post it on Instagram a few weeks ago because, I mean, look at it. I wanted to feature it on the channel because it's got kind of a unique story. The wood on top is actually a cherry tree that lived in downtown Detroit, Michigan since like the 1920s or something, that recently got cut down, and Gabriel's been making guitars out of them. Carina back, and one of the craziest Brazilian rosewood fretboards I think I've ever seen on a guitar. The pickups are really cool too. This is a gold coil, which will kind of get you into that Rye Cooter territory. And then the bridge pickup is based off of a no-caster that's owned by Lucinda Williams. And for my overdrive and distortion sounds, I was using a combination of the Hoof Reaper V2 from Earthquaker, the dynamic distortion from Vertex, and the harmonic boost from Echo Park. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the track. So I've got the actual Logic session pulled up that I did the track in, and I want to talk about workflow, starting with the iPhone recording. So you can hear it's pretty rough. I wasn't even actually plugged up to an amp. And that's my first tip, is always be ready and willing to record your ideas as they happen. I can't tell you how many times I've lost or forgotten ideas for riffs or chord progressions because I was too lazy to pull my phone out and hit record. I would just think, oh, I'll remember this. This is a great idea. There's no way I could ever forget this. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, I had no idea what I played. This is also a really good way to use your time and creative energy efficiently. Most of us, including professional musicians, are really busy, and we don't always have time to work out song ideas. So I've found that I get a lot more done when I sit down to write a track if I've got a list of song ideas ready to go on my phone that I can just scroll through and pick one as a jumping off point, as opposed to just sitting here for half an hour or an hour trying to come up with some kind of riff or melody or something to start with. So we all know that feeling when you're warming up or practicing and that riff or that lick hits you. Pull your phone out and record it. You'll thank yourself later. Okay, so once I've got my bass idea ready to go, I'll open up my DAW. In this case, I'm using Logic 10, and I'll pull up an audio track, and the first thing is to just record a scratch guitar track. In this case, I've got it here, and you can hear it's pretty rough. Now, since I ended up using a drum loop on this song, which we'll get to in a minute, I actually redid the scratch track a couple of times to line up the tempo. So this is actually probably my second or third take on the scratch guitar. And what I like to do here is just let it record and keep playing. And as new ideas come up, I record them. The nice thing about Logic is it's easy to cut things up, move them around to create a basic song structure to work from. So you can see here I was working out ideas, and this section I actually recorded later. I actually cut it up and drug it over here and thought, okay, this could be a good spot for a bridge or a chorus or something, or B section. And then as I kept going and kept playing, I stumbled into this big sort of outro idea. So in a matter of one single take, I was able to record 4 or 5 different ideas that I could then chop up and create a basic skeleton of a song structure from. Now, an important thing when you're recording scratch guitars, don't worry about your tone, don't worry about how good the take sounds, if it's in time or out of time. It's more so about just getting the ideas out. Nobody's gonna hear the scratch track unless you have a YouTube channel and you decide to show it to the whole internet. Under normal circumstances, nobody's gonna hear the scratch, so don't spend time trying to make your scratch track a perfect take, because it doesn't matter. Okay, so once my scratch tracks are done, the next thing I like to do is put drums into the mix. Now, I do this a couple of different ways depending on the track and the session and how much time I have. If I have a really clear picture of what I want the drums to sound like, I'll actually take the time to program in my drums individually with my MIDI keyboard and my library of drum samples that I've been collecting over the past few years. Or in some cases, like this track, I'll actually use a drum loop. Now, I really like That Sound drums. If you're not familiar with them, I'll link them down below. They're not paying me. I have no affiliation with That Sound drums. I just really like their products. I use their sample libraries and their loop libraries a lot in these tracks just because they sound awesome. So if you're interested, the loop that I used in this track is from a pack called Jekyll and Hyde that was done by Paul Mabry for That Sound, and it's just awesome. So earlier when I said I re-recorded the scratch track, that was because I found a loop that I really liked and it was set at a specific tempo. So I just dropped the loop into Logic and recorded my scratch on top of that. Okay, so here's the drum loop isolated by itself. Now this loop is cool because it has 2 distinct sections. It has this overall groove, and then it breaks down into this sort of upbeat thing here. Now, I'm going to be doing future videos in this series diving into deeper detail on how I mix drums both on loops and when I'm programming them for these tracks, as well as guitar and bass and keys and everything else I'm doing on these performances. Now my scratch tracks and basic form of the song are done, then drums are kind of roughly where I want them to be. I go ahead and move on to the actual guitar track, both the main hook tracks and the rhythm guitar tracks. So I started off with the main idea, labeled it Guitar 1, and here it is just by itself. So you can hear it's changed a little bit both in tone and feel and the actual notes from my scratch track. That's gonna happen as you start to develop ideas. They're gonna change and kind of get honed in. So once I have that down, I moved on to my rhythm tracks. Now I've talked about before, I like to double track guitars a lot. I actually did a video on it, which you can see here. So here are both of the rhythm guitars by themselves. So once the first section is done and double tracked with rhythm guitars, I'll try and think ahead and figure out if I'm going to use those sounds anywhere else in the song, and I will go ahead and track them while I have those sounds pulled up. This way you don't have to worry about going back and trying to redial in your specific amp setting or what pedals you were using or guitar. Just go ahead and knock those sections out so that they're consistent. If you are repeating choruses or verses, a lot of times people will fly parts or copy and paste parts. Sometimes I will do that, but most of the times I actually like to perform the parts because you get slight variations and it kind of helps the overall track feel more live that way. So the last foundational part I like to get down is the bass. Now, on a track like this, where there's a really distinct guitar line or guitar riff, I will usually double that line or riff on the bass. So here is the bass track at the beginning, isolated by itself. Once that's done, I'll then move through the rest of the song and get all the bass parts tracked, and that's pretty much it for the foundation. And then the fun part starts. Now it's time for experimentation. At this stage of the process, I've got the basics down. They're pretty much established. The direction, the dynamics of the song are all there. Now I get to embellish everything. This is usually my favorite part of the process because this is when I'm recording my guitar solos or I'm coming up with really interesting tones and cool detail parts to kind of add in. For me, this is the most creative part of the whole process, really. And I want to make a note here. For a long time, I avoided writing because I would get discouraged before I ever got to this part. I would constantly talk myself down and say, oh, this sounds stupid or this sucks, it's not going to go anywhere, before I ever even developed the idea fully. So if you're struggling with that, my word of advice for you is to just keep going. Try and push through that. You may not be totally sold on a part. You may think the song is not going anywhere when all you need to do is add one part. Add the drums, add the bass, add another guitar part. You would be surprised at how many times that has completely changed my state of mind when I'm writing or recording something. If you ever feel stuck or if you're ever in a rut, just keep going. Try something new. So let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And also be on the lookout for more videos like this in the near future. I really want to start doing more stuff that's based in production and mixing and session style guitar playing. So if there's anything in particular you'd like for me to cover, let me know in the comments down below as well. As always, if you'd like to know more about the gear I use to make these videos and the gear I use to record with, that will all be linked in the description box down below. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Rhett Shull. Thanks for watching.